If you do not recognize my face, I am Lane Nelson. I have not been a part of our Tuesday evening conversations of faith in some time here. You have been visiting exclusively with this guy, Pastor Joel.
Yo.
He has been your gracious host in conversation for, I think, about a month. But I am back with you here tonight. I have just come back from a couple of weeks of vacation, and before that I was laid up with some personal mobility issues for a couple of weeks as well. So it's kind of exciting to be here talking with you, to be sitting next to Pastor Joel as we think about what life is like together in faith, which is, of course, the title of this series that you are participating in tonight. We have the chance to talk about what life is like in our faith lives over a various range of topics through this medium. But tonight we are going to be shifting focus. But before we jump into that, please let me invite you to say hello, to comment. If you have questions about things, please put those up, and we will be looking at those as we go. Now, a little disclaimer.
Like we do have Colleen.
No way!
And Carol. Hi, Colleen and Carol. Good to have you with us tonight. And Dorothy, is it Skadson? I think so. Dorothy says good evening, so good to see you. I didn't mean to interrupt there, Lane.
No, not at all, not at all.
Yeah.
This is exactly what I was just going to talk about. We have a new twist on what we're doing tonight. We have the ability now to have this little program broadcast live both on Facebook as well as on YouTube at the same time. So all of our YouTube participants don't have to sit and wait and look at it about 45 minutes later. They can see it live. But it means that we have to look at our comments in a little bit new way. And so we will be doing the best we can to figure out how we can most accurately greet people and answer questions as they come up. Because we really do want your thoughts on the conversations that we have, especially tonight. But before we do that, let me visit with Pastor Joel a little bit and say, what have we been doing for the last couple of weeks since I have been gone gallivanting around God's creation?
Sure, yeah. Well, we had a Together in Faith with my wife, Amy, and which was a lot of fun. And then we had...
so you're saying you upgraded while I was gone?
Well, you know what? I'm just going to let the people out there make that decision. It's not, yeah. But, and then we had a connection with seminary classmate, chaplain at University Hospital Jefferson in Philadelphia. That was Emmanuel Falor Sr., who he and I chatted about text, and we had a conversation with Steve Bond, pastor in central Pennsylvania. He's in Indiana County, Pennsylvania, because in Pennsylvania they do all these really confusing things by naming counties after other states. And so we had this great conversation about the text, and then this last week we had a conversation with Michael Bridges, a longtime friend and troubadour German. He lives in Hollywood, California, but does lots of traveling to Germany. And so we talked about travels to Germany. So now we're back here getting reacquainted with this conversation. So this is great.
And we are back now in a situation where we can sit a little bit closer to each other
right.
Because a lot of the world's restrictions around COVID-19 have been lessening, even in that brief window of time since I have been sitting in front of the screen with you guys tonight. So that's nice, too. It makes for a tighter shot online.
So as long as we're like hanging out, let's mention who else is hanging out with us online.
Yeah.
Carol Sinkink Anderson, Judy Eliason, Karen Slocum, let's see, Carol Thompson, Randy Colden, Brenda Shute. Hi, everybody. Thanks for checking in.
I see Harriet and Colin just jumped in as well.
Oh, yeah. Harriet and Colin. Excellent. Good to see you.
Boy, I am completely blown away that you guys are spending as beautiful of a night as we have online. I'm hopeful that you are watching this on your front or back porch somewhere where you can enjoy this gorgeous June evening. Usually we have some pretty good weathers on Tuesday nights, and that seems to be continuing right now. It might have been warm in the day, but outside our window here, it's settling in on a gorgeous night in Sioux Falls, South Dakota. Hopefully it's a gorgeous night wherever it is that you are participating in this conversation. So let me surprise you again with another question, Joel. Any highlights from the last couple of weeks, things that have gone on, or surprises?
Oh, man. Well, it was really fun to reconnect with some folks who I wouldn't have maybe had the time to chat with, except that I was like, oh, I gotta have a conversation.
Yeah.
So let's have a conversation with some folks who I haven't been over connect with because of the pandemic or for other reasons, and making multiple moves. So it was just really good conversations to have. So I hope you all enjoyed it. I certainly enjoyed having those conversations with those folks. So
very cool. Yeah. And I think it also then brings to mind, hearing you talk about this, of other possibilities of people who are out there conversing with us tonight, that we could maybe even bring some other East Side members into the conversation without them having to necessarily be here in person. Mm-hmm. So lots of possibilities.
Yep.
Well, tonight, as mentioned, we are going to continue our conversations of faith. You might see that there has been a question that's been up on the screen since we started this whole thing that says, what does your faith life look like today? And so, if you are so willing, you can certainly put that in the comment about what your faith life looks like today, because it's under the conversation we're having, Together in Faith, Faith in Ministry after COVID. Now, I know that COVID-19 has not been eradicated, and I know there are many people who are still suffering with that. But as far as the world functions, or at least here in the United States, so many of the restrictions that we've been used to living under have lessened with more and more people being vaccinated. And so the question now becomes, did we just fall back into normal and into what things were like a number of months ago? Or will things somehow be different? And while we don't have a crystal ball and we're not doing the Karnak kind of a thing, I think there are some indicators that at least can lead us down some paths about how things might go. So we'll talk a little bit about what's been going on in church before and after all this business started, but also thinking then about, for the people who are in the pews or normally in the pews or used to be in the pews, how is their faith life different? Or even just people in general across the culture.
Sure.
What's faith like today for people as opposed to what it was maybe like 15 months ago? So that's kind of what we are looking at under tonight's conversation. There's not a right, there's not a wrong. But we would certainly love to hear what your faith life is like today as opposed to a little while ago. So, with that as a 8.5 minute long introduction, way too long, I want to throw out this comment. Now, when I came back from vacation, I went to the Synod Assembly. And as a part of the Synod Assembly, there were some breakout groups, and one of those breakout groups was on this very topic, life and ministry after COVID. And the people who were presenting that had gone through some education, and they had learned that the dominant emotion for many, many people in 2021 is languishing. And languishing, as they were defining it, is kind of as if you were looking at life through a fog, is how they kind of went about it. Now, as I entered that conversation with them, I said, I think we did a really good job when COVID started about pressing on. And I don't mean just us here at Eastside, though I think we did, but I think people in general, we adapted, we figured out how do we keep things going. We shifted and we kept the train on the tracks, so to speak. But after 15 months of keeping the train on the tracks, there were little bits of newness, but lots of it was just, how do you keep things from completely just falling apart? And I think many people felt that in their own lives. How do I just keep my life from falling apart in the midst of all of this change? Well, now, as the rules are somehow different, do we have a little bit of fatigue from that?
Sure.
Are we ready to grow? Do we even want to grow? Would we rather just, do we even know what to do? So hence I think that term languishing is we're trying to transition from one state of being that took all of our energy to something else now, and it feels as if we're kind of looking in a mirror dimly, as the Apostle Paul might have said in his writings. So, languishing. Are you languishing, looking at life through a fog, or is that just a bunch of hooey?
Yeah, I mean, I think like that's a question that everyone could answer for themselves. You know, I coming into this place not having an experience of what Eastside was like prior to pandemic. I don't feel
Disneyland. It was like Disneyland every day.
Wow. I'm so glad I didn't experience that. The whole "It's a Small World After All" ride every Sunday. I don't need that, folks. I don't need that. No, don't need it.
Nice.
Just.
It was more like the teacup.
Yeah, right, sure.
When you're just dizzy.
Yeah, no. So I mean, I think that's an interesting question to ask folks who are out there listening, and I'm seeing some comments come in on the comment section on our Facebook page. So
cool.
This is great. But for me, that's not true. But that doesn't mean that it can't be for you. And so, looking to see here what Brenda is telling us. All right. One new piece of my faith is this gathering.
Wow.
So that's great. Yeah, really, really good.
That's really cool. Thank you for that compliment, by the way. Appreciate that.
Yep.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Who else out there? Do you feel that? I think I can say that there's been some palpable kind of relief of people coming back. Though I can't necessarily speak to. I don't know, Judy, who is Mickey Mouse? But I can't speak to if people have been gone a long time and now coming back, or if this is just like they were. For me, they're all new. So,
I suppose,
yeah. Right? But good conversations, that we're seeing people kind of now coming through. So we were chatting before we went online about how lovely it was to see everybody towards the end of the last service. This Sunday. So
this past Sunday we had way more in-person attendance than I guessed we would have. Having been gone for a couple of weeks, I came back and was thinking, all right, well, it's June. People are kind of be at their cabins. The lake homes have all opened up.
Right.
People will be out doing June things. But boy, we had a ton of people, especially at that 10 o'clock service.
It was a party, man. We had a baptism. If you missed it, man, you missed it.
Celebrated both sacraments.
Yeah, right. No, it was a good time. Had a trick Christ candle that wouldn't light, but that's
right.
Okay. We overcame the adversity. So, really, and phenomenal piano piece by Brett. So if you haven't seen that, go check out the Facebook live stream of last Sunday service. It was great. So,
Well, I'm going to quick shift gears because without dwelling on what happened in church during COVID stuff, I would just kind of wrote through some things that happened to kind of frame this a little bit for myself. Now, when life went wonky, roughly around the 15th of March or so, when we decided that we and the rest of the world were no longer going to be holding worship services in person, the very first Sunday we did worship online for people. So we didn't miss a beat. There was still a worship each week, even though if it was just mainly us holding up a single iPhone, recording the service to a live stream on Facebook. It evolved from there. But we didn't miss a beat. But we also then had to change the way we did funerals. And so funerals for a big period of time became only live streamed with, 7 or 8 people in the room. Weddings the same way. Confirmation we had to finish the year doing online only. Our men's Bible study that meets in the morning had to go online only. That was a feat getting that baby going. And then we didn't have any meetings in the building. And so it was just crazy. And so the office was continuing to function, but we weren't having that people interaction during the week. Then we started to kind of lessen things up in the summer. We started to worship in person at the end of July, but with some restrictions. A couple of gatherings started to happen, but not many of them. And the ones that did were all pushed down to our barn building. When we started up in the fall, confirmation took place, but in a different format with precautions and limited time. Sunday school the same way. We didn't hold any special events. There weren't any congregational fellowship kinds of things that were taking place. There wasn't any food at anything that we did. There was no fellowship time around the worship services. There wasn't even a funeral lunch for the few people who were here. Just lots of things that were completely different. And so now it brings us to where we are at today. So I'm going to ask Joel, would you share just a little bit about where Eastside is at today? And I know many of the people who are watching and participating tonight don't necessarily worship regularly at Eastside, and you have your own kinds of things that maybe changed in Houston or Arizona or wherever it is that you're watching. And kind of curious, what are they like today where you're at? So where are we at Eastside now as we're coming through COVID restrictions being lessened?
Yeah, quickly, so I can mention Alice's comment here about, she says, my faith is including more prayers. Isn't that interesting, Alice? Absence makes the heart grow fonder. Maybe there is something there to that old cliche. I think that, actually I kind of agree with you, Alice, that I am also more prayerful these days than maybe I have been in the past. But to get to Pastor Lane's question about where we are at Eastside. So while Pastor Lane was on vacation, the COVID task force met, and this was after the CDC changed some of their guidelines. And we decided to follow those guidelines as well. And I got to tell you, I am so happy to be able to just follow our COVID task force lead. They're a great group of people who really take that role very seriously, and I'm so glad to just be able to live under that direction as a pastor. So we've decided that we've taken off some of the distancing pews. So there isn't any social distancing in the main section, but for those who still feel more comfortable having a little bit of distance between them and others, all of the side pews and back pews still have the every other rope up. And for right now, we're going to keep it that way. We don't, unless we have some big spikes in attendance in the summer. For those of you who still feel more comfortable having that social distance, you can still have it. Masks are not mandated, again, following the CDC guidelines for anyone who has received the vaccine. And of course, not everyone has. And so just my own personal choice, because we have youth and other people who either have not received it or cannot receive it. I still wear mine when I'm not behind the pulpit or behind the table, but we also don't ask anyone. We ask for their own, to express their brotherly and sisterly love for the community by wearing a mask if they feel they need to, or if they haven't received the vaccine, or maybe have received the vaccine but it doesn't produce antibodies, and that is also true in some people. So those things are true. We are now having our coffee fellowship between services, and that will be happening throughout the summer. And we're also going to do 3 outdoor worship services. So those will be coming up last Sundays of each month. So those are some of the things that we're doing to kind of slowly bring ourselves back into more kind of standard practice.
Sure. I'm excited about those outdoor worships, and those are one thing, at least in our context, that was thrust upon us because of COVID.
Sure.
We held last summer our first outdoor worship that I'm told here in at least 20 years.
Oh, wow.
And so it was fun to do that, and we did it just because we wanted to get together and see each other. And so people had so much fun doing that, they said, well, hey, why don't we do this every summer? So now, like you mentioned, the last Sunday of June, July, August, we'll have our second service held outside. So
remember to bring a lawn chair for yourself, and if you have an extra one for a friend, then bring an extra one just in case someone forgets theirs. But we'll be doing that last Sunday of every month, June, July, and August, and it's going to should be a really great time to worship outside.
Another piece that I was told we're kind of opening up again is on funeral receptions. Sure. And that so if we have a funeral and the family would like to hold a reception here following the service, we're now able to start doing that again. So that will be, I think, a significant ministry piece, because there's just something missing when you have that loss of a loved one, and you're not able to have that knit group of family and friends and acquaintances sit down with you and kind of share in that grief with you over some food. So that will be nice.
Well, and as a new thing, the first time that we did, we actually live streamed a wedding. End of May, Ashley and Ethan's wedding was live streamed, and I know they appreciated that for their family members who either couldn't or weren't able to kind of join in that. So those are all really great kind of things that came out of this time.
Yeah.
We wouldn't have even, I'm guessing, thought to live stream a wedding.
Not before COVID.
Not before COVID, right? Yeah. So, good.
Yeah. Well, as you can see, there was a whole lot of changes here. I'm sure there was wherever you were at. And now here, most of those have been kind of lifted and being lessened, though, with still a few tweaks to try and do what we can to keep people safe. But we're kind of getting back into a more sense of normalcy. So then every pastor's fear is, will the people come back? Oh. Will they come back and be a part of that worshiping community that you were used to, or what will happen to them? Which kind of brings us to that conversation. And another thing that was brought up in the breakout session I was at about ministry after COVID was that there's a significant amount of people, roughly, I think they said, I'll get my number straight, but for sake of conversation, about 15% who have kind of gone to like online only now. They're just going to worship that way. They've decided that's what they're going to do. They like it. They're not going to change. There's roughly about the same amount who will do both. They just can't get enough church, and so they'll go in person. They'll still watch online. But roughly a third of people who used to go will just not go, period, anymore. At least that's what the Barna research was finding a number of months ago, that there's roughly a third of church attenders who just stopped. And for whatever reason, they're not motivated to go back in person or online. Yeah. And that's what really kind of gets me worried and wondering, what is people's faith life like post-COVID? And how does that mean we as a church need to be doing ministry in a different way? And again, in that seminar, they talked lots and lots about communication. Now more than ever, you need to communicate. Not that we didn't before, but now. And they threw out the numbers. And again, I don't know how much I buy into this, but the old adage was you need to say things 7 times before people hear it. Sure. Now with all the noise out there and everybody being online, you have to say things 11 times before people hear it and understand, maybe. But I think the idea is that we're just getting so much at us that it's hard to focus and hold to specifics. And it also then becomes harder to filter personally as to what's important. And if you had kind of a quasi-happy kind of faith life before, chances are pretty good that's going to get lost in the noise post-COVID, or at least lost in the languishing of whatever your life might be like. But I think for some, like we had mentioned in the comments, it will bring it even more focus. Yeah. So I'm not sure where people are at or where viewers are at. I'm still in my own personal walk of faith, experiencing nuances and changes and things. So we're still coming to land on what does it look like tomorrow and the day after.
Well, I think you mentioned as we were kind of getting ready for this conversation about, well, doesn't this put it back onto the valence of the person, as well as the community, like those two places, which is where faith resides, especially in our Lutheran understanding, where it is the work of the Spirit in the individual, but it's the work of the Spirit also in the community, in the gathering of faith, and that can happen both in person, but it can also happen online. And I'm guessing, people have those kind of faithful experiences, waving to each other, even here as we've been communicating in these chats. That is a connection, and I see no reason why when the Spirit, when Jesus promises, wherever two or more gather in my name, there I am in your midst, I don't see any reason why this kind of gathering via a screen doesn't is somehow not included in that lovely promise. So,
Well, you bring up a good point. Even just through this format, we have formulated a whole new community of people who are, at least in the past, tangentially connected to Eastside, but now participate on a pretty regular weekly basis, at least in some conversation of faith, whether they live here or many states away. And that just wouldn't have existed before. I hope that this format has some positive faith deepening, stretching response in people. But again, it's a relatively new format for us. I guess the people out there would have to answer that better than us. But it's been good for me to kind of focus on something each week and have a new take on it. Mm-hmm. But you also hit on something that I brought up in my sermon Sunday, and I'm guessing most of these people who are participating, at least live with us, heard that. There's that sense of we are connected in our family of faith and our church family, but those relationships we have also bear responsibility. Mm-hmm. And so we are called to be responsible for the other people of faith. And like you said, the user end, who might have been distanced a little bit during COVID, has that responsibility to participate, at least not in their own salvation, but in their own faith life.
Right.
You can't get people and pull them off their couches and carry them to church.
Yeah, I mean,
at least not everybody. A couple you could, but
on some level, this is a call to check in on your people.
Yeah,
right.
Yeah.
And so, in the same way that this Together in Faith Tuesday night series has been a check in on your people.
Yep.
Now that this has been happening for when did Eastside start doing this? When did you, Lane, start doing this?
These Tuesday nights started roughly in June a year ago. So I'm going to guess we've been doing this for about a year. Maybe it was May.
So this has been at roughly 52 check-ins of checking in on your people. Yep. So now I think on some level, as this starts to open up, this is maybe a challenge to those of you out there.
Now I'm so curious.
What's that?
I'll be right back. I'm going to check.
What? Where's he going? I don't know. All right, but this is a challenge to kind of check in on your people. And because this group that gathers here online isn't exclusive to Eastside, that there's some of you are in Arizona or North Dakota or Minnesota or Wisconsin or wherever you are, maybe that call right now, if the Spirit is nudging you, to check in on your people and to see where the Spirit might lead that. I think there's something powerful there. And hopefully this is a word of encouragement to do that also. So you left and now you're back.
I did. I'm back because we started our denomination conversations the 23rd of June, and we did 6 weeks prior to that.
Ah, okay. You were checking to see if we had 50 some weeks.
We would have started roughly May 12th.
All right.
So
okay.
so we have well over 55 of these babies.
All right.
Up there that you can watch if you just have nothing else to do tonight. You could binge watch these things.
So I hope you take that kind of call seriously to check in on your people, whoever your people are, to check in on them and to give an encouraging word and to just ask how they're doing.
I think that's maybe a nice way to bring some of this conversation to a close, is that, one, what is faith life and ministry life like post-COVID? Well, no one's going to open your Bible for you in your home.
Right.
No one's going to sit down and pray the prayers of your heart. People pray for you, but I mean, some of that has to come to you. We need to take some of that motivation, just like we do for our health. No one is going to eat right for us. Right. No one is going to, exercise for us. Yep. The same is true with this. But I love what you were saying about we do then have that responsibility to check in on people and see how they are doing. That's what makes us church family, is that we're in this and we have to do some things, but we have those other people who help us and coach us along. And Hopefully we even see that on these conversations here. If you notice you haven't seen somebody's name pop up in a while, to call them, check in on them, or just to drop in on, some of your fellow church members and see how they're doing.
Yeah, good.
Let them make you coffee. Well, let us end this conversation here for tonight. But hopefully you will continue to have it with your own friends, whether they go to Eastside or some other church. I think it would be fabulous and very interesting to sit down with people who go to other congregations, other denominations, see how things are similar and different now, and also just to see how people are doing. What a great way to be able to have a conversation of faith with somebody else, whether it's an Eastside member or just one of your best friends, to say, boy, what's your faith like now that COVID has kind of been around for a while? How is it stronger? How is it weaker? How is it different? And having that conversation with somebody who's close to you is maybe one of the most meaningful, significant conversations you could have all week.
Yep.
And if one or two of you have that conversation out of this 31 minutes of rambling, it's time well spent. So do that. Ask how your friends are doing with their faith with all of this COVID business. So let us close with Luther's evening prayer. I give thanks to you, my heavenly Father, through Jesus Christ, your dear Son, that you have graciously protected me today. And I ask you to forgive me all my sins where I have done wrong, and graciously to protect me tonight. For into your hands I commend myself, my body, my soul, and all that is mine. Let your holy angel be with me, so that the wicked foe may have no power over me. Amen. And may you be able to go to sleep and rest peacefully. May you be able to put the weight of the world on God's shoulders and not your own, and trust that God is there with you. And if my daughter Madeline is actually still watching, hopefully you brought home freezies from the store so that I can have one when I come home.
Wow, I hope they're frozen.
I know.